Hello, happy September to you. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here for the 4 Septembers now that we have celebrated together. See, is that right? 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. This is the fifth one. This is our fifth September. I wanted to, before I jump into other kinds of content for this month, I wanted to talk for a second about why I decided to revisit the concept of pretty privilege after acting like for so many years that it was the worst thing that I could ever speak of, and treating the very name of it, so very name of that topic, pretty privilege, like the name Voldemort. It was the video that shall not be named, the topic that shall not be named for so long on this channel. And what must have happened in my life for me to decide to revisit that. Now, for some of you, you are a patron, so I've already talked about this a little bit on Patreon. I'm going to talk about in a little different way here on YouTube, but let's just say it came from a lot of different places. The first place is that I wanted to put some respect on my name when it came to that topic. I had always felt like I had a good point, and I didn't have that much of a different point than anybody else. I felt like much like the concept of coffee dates or going 50-50 or any of the other topics that when people give their personal input and like why they do a specific thing, the internet sort of takes it and makes it really vitriolic and like volatile for no reason. I felt like the concept of pretty privilege, at least where I was coming from with it, was taken and blown way out of proportion. And at the time I decided to remove my take from my platform. And again, if you ask me, several people asked me in the comments, even on my last video that I just posted, they asked, why would you take it down? I could identify it. And I think I've made it clear. So I'm just going to say it one more time to you people, especially those of you who asked me why I would take it down, but you're asking me from a profile photo that is a picture of a plant, and your username is something that is metaphoric and makes no sense to anybody but you. When you decide to put yourself out there in all of your glory, so with your face, your full name, because I did a lot of interviews and podcasts that first year, so there are some people who are on YouTube and I still don't know their full name. I still don't. They've been on YouTube for years. Within my first year of doing content, it was like, oh, yep, she goes by this, but this is her full name. I mean, I exposed the hell out of myself just so quickly and for very little payoff in the end. But when you do that, when you present yourself fully and totally, and you are open and you are raw and you are vulnerable, it is like marching yourself out in front of a firing squad. And I feel like those of you who sit back and say, I could relate, you're saying it from the comfort of your home. You're saying it from the comfort, you're behind your screen. Nobody knows your full name. Nobody knows that you're walking around with those feelings. And when people know who you are and they know that you're walking around with those feelings, they tend to want to label you as that being the only thing that you've ever felt. You become the face of something that you don't necessarily want to become the face of, and any criticism they have about it, any negative feeling they have about it, they attest to you and they put on you. And people are really good at making you feel like you're the only one in the world that's ever felt that thing. So basically what I'm saying is you might have been able to relate, but I was the one taking the hits. And they were not good hits. They were not positive hits. Anybody who's like, oh, I thought the video was great. There was so much negativity that came along with that. So much negativity. And both online in the way I was received and off. In fact, it was very rare that another creator would see my video and say, oh, I agree with her. Like, this is not, what is she talking about? She's not crazy. There was one person at the time, and I did use a screenshot from her video in the last video that I posted, so I'll bring her up again. But she goes by Dr. K. I thought her video was excellent because she was basically saying everything this woman is saying is a normal thing to be upset about. You may not agree with the context or you may not believe her, but her emotions are normal. And she was a licensed therapist. You know how people love to throw that out. As a licensed therapist, as a licensed counselor, as a certified teacher, people like to throw out their credentials before they give their opinion, which you should, honestly, especially on an internet where everybody has an opinion, right? So I was like, yo, I like this. But most of the time, the people that were talking about me and talking about my content, they did not have positive things to say. I was a donkey of the day. I was a dummy of the day. I was a woman with low self-esteem who just didn't get it. I was somebody, it was not good. It was not good, whether that was here or offline. And I want to say that I was just starting off as a content creator too. So it was the very first thing that a lot of people were seeing. It was my first impression, and it was not a good first impression. And so again, if you could relate, I think that that's wonderful. If you liked that first video along with a lot of the other videos that I eventually decided, yo, I don't know if I want this on my channel. You're like, oh, you took your videos now. Trust me when I say I didn't just see it from like your side of things, which was great. I had to take in your side. I had to take in the negative. I had to hear it all. And I had to make the best decision for me. Because again, I was the one taking the hits. I was the one people were labeling. I was the one in the arena. So I was the one who said, that's enough. How can I make my existence online just a little bit more peaceful? What needs to go? And for me, that particular piece of media needed to be taken off of my platform. I needed it not to be here. Speaking of other creators, I was made aware that I believe I'm just going to put her channel up here. Olay decided to pull some of my clips and comment on the topic as well. And some people wanted me to make a reaction. And I want to say I'm not going to be doing that. I made a decision that when I talked about Pretty Privilege again, if somebody wanted to talk about it, whether it was positive, whether it was negative, they were perfectly within their rights to have a conversation. But if my work and what I do here is the subject, I don't also need to be the audience too. Because sometimes, like my experience with Dr. K, it can be a positive thing. And I'll be like, yeah, girl, you got it. But sometimes it can be a negative thing. And I'm not saying that video was negative. I don't even think we weren't talking about really the same stuff. But well, we were, but it was different. But my point is that I'm not here on the internet to just be going back and forth and, oh, I see you said something, so now I have to say something, and this part now I have to. And I'm not going to be doing that. If you're going to participate in the internet ecosystem, you have to be aware that people might see what you do and say, oh, that's interesting. I want to use maybe a clip of that to expand on that further. Or I want to talk about this. And again, it can be good. It can be bad. It can be positive. It can be negative. But you will drive yourself crazy as a creator if every time someone wants to add on or maybe wants to take away, you feel the need to respond and to create content off of that. You'll be stuck. And that's another thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to have to keep making videos and keep responding because I did that 4 years ago. I did that for you. Anytime somebody had something to say, I was like, and another thing, and another thing. And it just clouds up my feed. It's not how I wanted to get down. So, I was very grateful that I was thought of though, and that I was included, and, that the inclusion was, from what I gather, respectful. And, yeah, I think it is an important conversation, and it was an important part of the internet zeitgeist, which is again why I decided to revisit the topic. Another reason I decided to revisit the topic is I have stopped thinking about myself as a content creator. I am now a content producer. That means when it comes to this channel, this is my own personal production company, and anything goes. If I want to start a podcast and run it for a month and then end it based on how people respond, then that's what I do. If I want to have a series of skits to illustrate a topic, then that's what I'll do. If I want to do a series of video essays and take my time and devote 12 to 18 hours a day editing for a 30-minute video essay, then that's what I'm going to do. When it comes to this channel, I have decided that the most important thing is that content is produced, not necessarily that it's content that I love or that it's content that everybody agrees with me on, but that content is produced. When you're thinking about things that way, you also want to make sure that you post things that are going to be relevant to your audience, which brings me to another point, and a reason why I decided to revisit this. And that is a new rule that I have for posting here, which is one for me and one for thee. So one video that I'm really passionate about, I'm going to be posting one tomorrow actually about our good sis Beyonce. That is something that I might get 10,000 views on. You see from the views on the Pretty Privilege video, like people will watch content if it interests them, right? It's not necessarily everything you make is not necessarily going to vibe with your audience. Everybody's not going to want to see that. But if people want to see it, they will watch it. And for a long time, I was like, well, the things that they want to watch from me, I don't necessarily want to make. I don't want to talk about my personal drama. I don't want to talk about this subject because everybody's lived. I don't want to. And it's like, girl, do you want to do the job or not? Do you want to be a content? Do you want to do this or not? Well, if you're producing content and your idea is let's get eyes on it. Let's get stuff, let's make stuff people are interested in. Let's do things that they want to see. You can't take it so personal. Sure, it's great that you sat there and sung your way through Kelly Clarkson's catalog while, comparing her Search for Love to your own. That's so great. That's so personal. People really didn't give a damn about that. I mean, the people that wanted to watch watched, but you have to think about it. It has to be more of a equal give and take between you and your audience. So don't take things so personal. Be open to playing the game. One for you. Make your content about Beyonce, post your vlogs, post your silly little takes on stuff that people might not be that passionate about. And then one for the algorithm, one for the audience. What do you know people will watch from you? Make that stuff too. One for me, one for thee. And that is another reason why I returned to it, because I said, I know people will watch this and I want to make things that actually benefit my channel in a positive way, because this is a job for me. And the last reason why I returned to it is because I am a person who loves anniversaries. I love celebrations. I love just acknowledging that time has passed, and I love graduations. And that particular video was the birth of my online career. It was the birth of my reality as a public figure. I've had other videos that have had a lot of views, but none of them have gotten the response that one got. And I know by mentioning it, but not having it on my platform, I'm creating a bit of a Streisand effect. But I want to tell you something. I don't have it on my platform because I don't have it. I went through a period, I think it was about 2023, where I got so mad at just how my content creation career was going that I destroyed, took them off my hard drives, took them off my channel, took them off. I have videos that I've taken down, not just privated, taken down, but I still have them on a hard drive somewhere. I can find them. I can find them. This one, that one, and a couple others, I can't even find them because I didn't want the temptation of maybe uploading them again, because I went through what you're seeing now is the end of the trauma, the light at the end of the tunnel after years of feeling so weighed down by how negatively I was received as a creator, and acknowledging that some of that was fair and then some of it was completely unfair, and then dealing with other things. And then just really, woo, what you're seeing now is the end of that. Someone continuing to post, someone continuing to try until they finally felt good about themselves again. And so part of me getting to that point was crashing out and wiping my drives and being like, get away from me. Anything I felt like didn't align ultimately with who I wanted to be or how I wanted to be seen in the public eye. So I don't have that damn thing. But I know by mentioning it, people are like, oh, I wonder what, so let's just say that it was very raw. It was very vulnerable, and it got a lot of attention. And it's been the only video of mine to create that much of a stir. Yes, I've had videos with high views since then. In fact, one of them I'm gonna talk about in this video, but nothing like that. And so it was really a birth in a way for me. And it was a painful birth. It was not an easy labor. It was not 3 pushes and I'm on the red carpet. No, it came with the end of relationships, and it came with reading some of the most horrible things that I've ever seen about me. And it came with, it was, but it was something that I meant at the time. I still mean it today. It was something that people could relate to, and it's something that gave birth in a way to a new way of living for me. So I wanted to acknowledge it, and I actually wanted to acknowledge it back in July, but July went by so quickly. And for the first 2 weeks of July, I was actually injured, so I didn't record anything. But I wanted to just pay homage and acknowledge it. And I said, what's a good way to do that? Let's not just mention it. Let's not just say, y'all remember when I did, but let's talk about it, and let's talk about it in a different way. And I told myself, I said, you know enough now about audiences and like how people receive things. You know enough now to know that it's not necessarily what you say, but it's how you say it. And so I reimagined talking about that in a way that was a little bit cleaner. So we're going to take away some of the heavier emotions, so when people are watching, they don't feel like this burden, because people will reject that. They don't like that. And we're also going to include some of the experiences that you had, because it was really crazy the way confirmation showed up in my life after I brought that topic up and I spoke about it so publicly. Meaning, like I said, I met so many women during that time who were like, I'll be friends. Let's be friends. And I met them through social media, and none of them were women who could relate. None of them were these are women who had been flown out, women who had been treated to gifts and treasures, women who had been, these were women who I was like, oh, okay, sis. But for some reason, they wanted to be my friend. And some of it was successful and some of it was not. But all of it was really confirming that I wasn't crazy, that there is another world that exists, especially for women who are deemed to be conventionally attractive. And I never had that experience. And so I wanted to take a moment and tell y'all I was right. And I think since then I had new stories that I hadn't told before. And so anyway, I felt like it was a good time to just return to it. And I appreciated the response that I did get from people who watched the Redux, I will say. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about that response. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference in the comment section. The first video, of course, the comments were so bad that people in my real life were like, girl, you okay? Are you reading the comments? Like, I couldn't even live if this was me. Oh my God. And I was like, oh no, I stopped reading. And it's true. I did stop reading probably about the first month that the video was out, because I wanted to make a response video to every comment. I wanted to make a response video to y'all, I was making response videos like every single day, and all of them didn't get posted, but everything people said in response to that video, whether it was my comment or it was a reaction, I wanted to respond. And so now I'm not there anymore. Now I'm like, yo, you want to say something? That's cool. That's on you though. I've said my piece, right? But back then, the comment section was my personal Vietnam. It was horrible. And I was going through and reading and taking a look. And what stuck out the most to me was the absence of hyperbole, as far as like people being, responding and being like, this is traumatizing to me, or just really, just a very murky and heavy emotional comment section. But instead, the comments sort of reflected my tone in my video. I'm very matter of fact. I moved through my points quickly because I had a script this time. I don't never usually have a script. I don't have a script for this video, but I moved through my points very quickly. I think the editing was different, so people responded differently. So it's like I said, it's not necessarily what you say, but it's how you're saying it. I think I tried to master being personal and also objective about certain things. And in general, it was much more pleasant to go through and take a look at how this video was received versus the other one. But I do want to say there were some comments. There was a comment that I wanted to respond to. And after 4 years on the internet, I'm very, very bad about letting the comment sit long enough for me to do a screenshot of it, take it, save it, because I might want to talk about it later. Now what I swear I just see white. If somebody leaves a certain type of comment, I just see white. And then I go in and I delete it. I block them. And afterwards I'm like, girl, what did you may want to talk about that. Like that could be something you respond to, especially if it's something ridiculous like that person who was like, you want to be a guru. That's why you want to be single. That was so ridiculous. I wish that I had saved it so you guys could see the exact wording that the person used, because it's like, if I'm going to speak on it, let me have the source material, right? But that's my logical mind. My emotional mind is like, get this shit away from me. Who is this? Get them away from me. So I don't always think, those two parts of my brain aren't always functioning together. And the same thing happened with a comment that was left under my new Pretty Privilege video. Somebody wrote, and their comment is still there. They wrote, I hate when you're telling your truth and people just say you're being negative. That was a comment that someone wrote. And I saw it and I was like, yep, it's true. It does happen. It's definitely a reality of my life as a content creator and as a person in the world, and especially with this topic for sure. So I was going to leave it alone. And then I was having a good time in the comment section, hanging out, see what y'all were saying, seeing, oh, that's a good point. Oh, yeah, they brought that up. Okay, I like this. We having a little conversation here. I like this. And so I click on their comment, I open it up, and underneath it is a comment that says, she is negative. She's still sitting up here complaining instead of trying to change. There is no way you make an effort and nothing changes in your life. I don't believe this. And, white it out, deleted the comment, blocked the person. But then I thought about that thinking. And I thought about how that thinking has followed me around with a lot of the things that I've talked about, whether it be here on YouTube, whether it be in my personal life. When somebody thinks that you're, for lack of a better word, bitching about something that you could clearly change in their mind, they think you can change it, then immediately they invalidate you. You no longer have a reality that they're going to respect. And all you are is negative. That's it. That's all they can see. You're just negative. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not going to deal with your negativity. And for the longest time, as not only a person, but definitely as a content creator, I felt bad about sharing certain things because, well, they're just going to think I'm negative. They're not going to take it seriously. So I don't want to talk about it. And so I didn't want to talk about a lot of personal stuff because I don't have a lot of wins. And I'm very matter of fact about certain things that happen. So like, for example, I've talked about fertility issues on here, my reality with them. And my reality is that I was dealing with a situation that was much bigger than what I could handle. And so I began to grieve never becoming a biological mother. Not only could I not afford to be a single parent, not only could I not afford to be a single parent, not only could I not afford, I'm saying that several times because people will still zoom in and they'll be like, why don't you fly to Africa? And you can get, and it's like, yo, if I can't do nothing here, if I can't do nothing down the street from my house, what make you think I can jump on a plane and do what are you talking about? If I can't afford to make the baby, how am I afford to raise the baby? What do you talk? People don't hear that. They just hear, I don't know what the hell they hear. They see, again, if they look at you and they think you shouldn't have this problem, everything you're talking about, they completely invalidate. But I've been, open about not being able to afford to be a single parent, having fertility issues that were much bigger than my scope of what I could handle and what I could afford to take care of. And so again, grieving not being a biological mom. And I decided to stop talking about that, stop talking about it on my TikTok, stop talking about just stop talking about it because the response is usually, well, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that you're just being negative. You're so now that I know that that's going to be the response, I'm very, hey, I said what I had to say. But I notice it's also the response anytime I talk about like relationships or dating. I'll say, oh yeah, it's just very hard for me. So I don't know if I'll ever, let's be positive here. I said what I said. Like I said, it was hard for me. If people look at you and they don't think it should be hard for you, no matter how many stories you tell, no matter how many experiences you have the wrong attitude and you need to fix it and you're just being negative. One specific story regarding that way of thinking sticks out in my mind. And it was a story between me and someone that I'm no longer friends with. They were in my life a long time ago, and then they were in my life for a short period of time around the time my content was like taking off about 3 or 4 years ago. And they would always come at me with that. You're so negative. I don't like the things you share on your channel. I don't like that. And eventually they found out my opinion about them and our friendship was over. But one of the things that always stands out to me is when they were demanding I have a more positive attitude after a really, really dark period in my personal life. And I'm going to tell you guys this. This is I hope to make this smaller, but this was a story that was on my channel for a little while, but I took it down because it was setting itself up to be another pretty privilege in a very negative way. Got 300,000 views within the first month and a half of it being posted. It once again erupted and created all of this reaction content. People wrote magazine articles about it, online magazine articles about it. I got reached out to do podcast about it. Like, I was like, oh my God. And it is a story time. And if you're new here and you've never heard it, then you're going to hear it. And if you have heard it because you've been here for a while, you're going to hear it again. But it's a story time about a moment where I realized that asking, believing, and receiving is only half the story. What happens after you receive what you ask for is the part that a lot of people don't talk about. And when I say a lot of people, I mean you manifestation girlies out there who will shut anybody down who doesn't have the life that they wanted or the things that they want with, well, you just didn't manifest. You're just not visualizing it. Did you make a vision board? I can't completely, put that way of thinking to the side because I know that things can work. You absolutely can write down what you want, visualize it, and bring it into your life. But what happens after that is out of your control. And people don't like to talk about that. So my example that I have for this is several years ago, at the beginning of 2022. I had been a content creator for all of 6 or 7 months. And I had a feeling that 2022 was going to bring some really good changes to my life, specifically financially. I was like, I think I'm going to be doing a lot of brand deals. I was right. I think my channel is going to continue to grow. I was right to a certain extent. And, but most importantly, what I want is I want to finally meet that person so that I can become a mom, because I think I've done what I set out to do in my life as far as like job wise. I finally made it as a creative. I'm going to talk about this in another video, but I know if you've been online at all, you saw the video about the girl who, I think her name is Recho Omandi, and she does the, Cutting Room Floor podcast, and she offered the $55,000 no benefit salary to start working in fashion in New York City. And when I saw that as a former creative graduate, who majored in something that doesn't pay a lot, that is deeply disrespectful, which was television. My degree literally said radio, television, and film, who was prepared in college to take jobs where you weren't going to get paid, where you were going to have to work terrible long hours to move yourself up. Like, they let you know you about to get out and you're going to get abused. Like, these industries are not other industries. Okay. So I saw that job offer and I was like, ooh, it's not for me. But that's because I'm 41 and I'm not in that mindset anymore. Like that hustle hard by any means necessary. I'm just not there. But if I was in a position where I wanted to work in fashion, or I wanted to be like a, administrator, I wanted to be somebody's right-hand woman, $55,000 a year, no benefits. Hell, who offers benefits? Who does that, especially in these careers, right? Because of my background and where I come from, I didn't think it was that bad. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day, because I know it was, but at the same time, it's like, this is this field. People are overworked, they're underpaid, and everybody thinks it's like acceptable because that's usually, unless they're a Nepo baby, that's where they started off. And so I felt weird that people were making her the scapegoat for how terrible these creative industries are. But I also felt relieved because I'm no longer out there in that way. If I want to write a short film and post it, I technically have a place where I can do that and get paid for it. So in a roundabout way, becoming a YouTuber satisfied that desire that I've had to be a creative and get paid for my creative ideas and work my whole life. And I didn't expect that when I first started posting years ago. But anyway, I was at a point in 2022 where I was like, okay, I've done it. I've posted my skits online. I've posted my takes. People know my name. I am here. I've arrived as a woman. And now it's time for that thing that has been consistently pushed back. And at this time, I didn't know how funked up my reproductive system was. Like, I thought I could still just pop out a baby, or I thought it was an easily fixable situation. Now I know it's not. But at this point in time, I was like, I have had a miscarriage, and We've been through a pandemic. We lived. I came out on the other side with a whole new career. I'm ready to meet him, and I'm ready to have a baby. I'm ready. Now, when I first started doing YouTube back in 2021, I had made a video where I was like, online dating is terrible. I would never go back to online dating. I'm not dating. And again, I had people who were like, oh, you're so negative. Oh, God. But the thing is those people had never, oh, some of the stories that I have lived, I'm sorry, but if I was on the other side and I was listening, I would be like, I understand, girl. I get you. Hey, all we can do is hope that it would be better, but I can totally understand you not wanting to put yourself out there again, because what the hell. But anyway, so 2021, that was my attitude, but going into 2022, I was like, everything's going to change. Not only am I ready cuz I finally made it as a creative to some extent, kind of, but also I'm going into my year 6 numerologically speaking, and I'm going to be 38 years old. See, years ago, when I was a young woman, I was working at a preschool, and I had this little boy that I loved. I loved him. And he was a handful, but that was my dog. That was my dog. And his mom was really surprised that we got along so well. She was like, he be acting up. This boy be throwing chairs and he be acting up. And I think with me and kids, a lot of the time, they would see that in their presence, they had someone who was crazier than a shithouse rat. No, I'm kidding. But someone who was just, whoa, what's she going to do? And of course, it was all a performance, right? But they needed to believe I was crazier than them, even down to the little ones. And so the minute that he and I met, he was like, I don't know about her. She ain't right. And so we would get along, and I loved. He was like my little baby. And his mom was always really impressed that I got along with him. And so she would talk to me a little bit. And one day she was talking to me, and she was like, I didn't think any of this was going to happen for me. And I was like, daycare? What's going on? And she goes, no, being a mom. And I was 38 years old, and I was single, and I met their dad riding bikes. And here we are 6 years later, and I've got him, and I've got his little brother, and it's just crazy how life goes. And I took that message, and I took those words, and I put them right here. I was like, 38, huh? Wow. And at the time, I'm 23. So 38 is like so far out in the future. And I'm like, man, if I get to be that old and still don't have any babies and still ain't met my man, I guess, but I could not imagine that might be my reality. So I'm going through life, and it's not happening. I get close, but it doesn't happen. I meet somebody, but ooh, he ain't ready. And I had a friend who had a cousin. Oh, not a cousin, an aunt. Well, she was more like her older sister. And because she was the youngest of her mom's sisters, and they had grown up and been very close. And my friend's mom had her relatively young. So she grew up like with this person being like an older sister to her. And she would always talk to me about how she got married so late. And I'm thinking, how late can it be? Because the woman looked so young. She was like, oh, she's almost 50. I said, well, when did she meet? She said she didn't meet him. She didn't meet her husband until she was 38. And when they met, and it was like, well, boom, we're doing this. And she had a shotgun wedding. She was like pregnant at the wedding. Like, it was so fast. And so what I picked up was that, everybody doesn't get their person before 30. I didn't even want my man before 30. That's not what I wanted. Everybody doesn't get him before 30. Some people go through their 30s or whatever, but there's something that happens right there in the pocket between 36 and 39. And when somebody comes in your life, then he either comes in and wastes your time some more, or he comes in like lightning, and overnight your life can change. And I had heard, and so I was like, 38. So when I had a miscarriage at 35, that was a horrible situation. I was like, it's all right. We went into a pandemic at 36. I was like, oh, I'm scared, but it's all right. 37, I get on the internet, and I'm like, oh, I'm finally a creative. Hooray! Going into that 38th year, I was like, all right, I'm ready to play ball. Where is he? I'm ready. So I start going out. I had already been hanging out for like the last 2 years, 2020, because Houston never really shut down. Okay, if you want to know the real, we were outside. 2021, I was out. Okay, here we go. 2020, I was like, we about to get serious. I mean, 2022, I was like, we about to get serious. So I was hanging out and going places. And something I noticed was that I would meet men and that they would immediately bring up their babies or our babies. It was like I had sprayed myself with eau de parfum de baby. And I was going out, and that was the energy that they were picking up off of me. And I got into a real high energy conversation one day with a guy who was like, "How old are you?" And I was like, "I'm 37." And he goes, "I'll give you two before you hit 40. I'm serious." I didn't start that conversation with him. He brought it up. There was something I was giving off that these people, I told y'all about the guy who told me, if we go on a date, you're going to get pregnant with twins that have vitiligo, because both of those things run in my family. But he was one of many who would meet me and be like, well, we're going to have a kid together. We're going to have a baby. And it's like, sir, I'm parched. Can I get something to drink? Can I get, and it was just, I was giving out. It made me feel very powerful. And it made me feel like, ooh, I better get my house in order, because I am feeling this energy and the universe is responding, baby. And so I just know in no time at all, I'm going to meet the person that I am meant for. And you may ask, what happened to the man who asked me how old I was? He would give me two before I turned 40. He was one of three biracial Black men in their early 50s who I met that year, who had issues with their race, like how they were received, and who was wearing a Canadian tuxedo when I met them, that all jean outfit and questionable jewelry. And also, he had like a criminal past. He gave me his name. He told me he was a lawyer. I looked him up when I went home, because I was like, I don't know. He's kind of strange. And I did not like what I found. So I was like, oh, never mind. We will keep trying. So I said this to a friend. I said, girl, whenever I go out, like, these men are coming up to me, but they don't want to take me on trips, and they don't want to buy me dinner. They want to have a baby, and it's out of nowhere. Like, I'll just be minding my business, and all of a sudden I'm like, I guess we could name our daughter Dorothy after your grandmother. What is your name? Like, it was crazy. And so she said, well, that's how the law of attraction works, isn't it? You want that. And so that's what you're calling in. And so I was like, oh, I was like, that? Okay. Well, let me get it together. So I took it to the Notes app. And this is why, you manifestation girlies, this is why I don't punch some of y'all in the throat when you be like, where's your vision board? You can't talk about how you didn't want a man when you forgot to visualize it on a vision board. I be wanting up. But I don't, because in a way, sometimes you be right. Sometimes that is how it works. You simply must write something down, visualize it, whatever. You never know what might show up. Okay. And I've had many, many times in my life where maybe not a vision board, maybe not a piece of cardboard with pictures all over it, whatever, but something as simple as a Notes app. My Notes app in my phone. I've written a list of what I hope to accomplish, whether that be with jobs, whether that be with friends, hell, pets, places I want to live. I write it down, and I'll be damned if it does not show up. So when that girl said to me, this is just law of attraction, baby. You're out there, you want that, and they're showing up. I was like, okay. So I said, well, I want to be clear. And I remember I went to her house, and I had like spent the night, and we had gone to a wine bar, and well, we drank a lot of wine. And I woke up in the middle of the night. I was parched. I was thirsty. I was like, oh, Lord. So I had to sit up and drink some water. And while I was sitting up, I said, I'm going to write down who I want. Because if everybody's showing up, who exactly do I want? Who do I want to make himself known before my 38th birthday? So it's 37 at the beginning of the year. Who is it? So I made a list of the man that I wanted. And a lot of the things were things I had been asking for ever. I think the first time I sat down and made a list, it was in 2010, and I met him, but he was gay. But I will say, I made that list at the time, but then at the same time, I asked to meet this man, but that it not be too serious, because I still had things I wanted to do in my life. And if I met him at this point in time, I know how I would be. I'd be, yes, I do the cooking. Yes, I do the cleaning. Let's go ahead and start having these babies. So I said, I don't want all of that so serious. And there's no other way well, the easiest way, at that point in time was obviously make him gay because there's nothing, if he comes in my life and well, what are we going to do? So anyway, I had always like written lists for guys I wanted to meet and whatever. And for the most part, I would meet them, but there would always be like a caveat. There would always be, it didn't work. There would always be so, it it kept it from coming together. And I always figured it just wasn't time. I just needed time. Like it just wasn't the right time. There were things I still had to do. There were things that if I became a mom, if I rolled off into the sunset with this man, I may not be pleased. It may not. So we need to make sure it's the right time. So I was so sure that this was the right time. I was like, bring him on. And I was filled with all of this love that I wanted to give. And I was felt like I just knew, okay, if I write this down, he gonna come. So I did. I sat there and I wrote a list and I was like, I want to meet a man who is boom, boom, boom. I'm not going to tell y'all what my list said, but let's just say I was very specific. So I used to have a friend that was really into, I feel like all of the church girls, all millennial church girls, when they grew up and The Secret came out around the same time we were like coming into our adulthood, everything that we maybe didn't agree with or maybe felt constricted by in the church, they took it to manifestation, law of attraction. So they took that same like very verbose and religious zealot attitude to, instead of giving you Bible verses, although some people kept that, now they were telling you about your vision board, right? So I had one friend who was like, I just don't think your vision board is specific enough. That's why you haven't found what you wanted. My vision board is, and let the vision board, whatever. Very intense, right? So I remembered her words and I said, we're going to make sure that this is specific and that whoever comes, like, I'm going to be so specific. So I wrote that on February 5th. February 11th, I go out to a Galentine's Day party. And I'm excited because I feel like I look pretty. And, it's my 37th Valentine's Day in the world. My 37th Valentine's Day single, but I'm like, it is what it is. I'm going to have fun and we're going to go out and have a good time. After Galentine's Day, after our dinner, we all went out to like this art show. And if you know where I'm going with this, you know where I'm going with this. But I promise I'm going to tell it a little bit different this time. Okay, so just sit back. All right, just sit back. So we go to this art show and we're there, and it is what it is. I'm not art person. I don't really care about a lot of art. I'm very specific about what I care about. Like I care about this. It's a painting that they had Sebastian and Samantha do for Mother's Day this year. I care about that. I love photography. I love statues to a point. I like artifacts, but I'm not the kind of person that you take to like a gallery opening or something so I can just stare and be like, yes, this is what I don't know. It's not for me. So we go and I'm kind of bored and I'm walking around. I'm just looking at things and I get to this one piece and I feel like it is literally speaking to me. And I can't stop looking at it. It like haunts me. I step away from my friends and I just walk along the aisles of this place and I just look at these pieces and I'm just like, I'm haunted. I'm sort of taken over by how beautiful I think this is. And I eventually catch back up with them and we're doing things or whatever. And one of my friends, a long story short, she ended up making a comment about this guy and he was not really feeling what she was saying. And so I went up to like where she was and I was like, let me get my girl because I think she was a little drunk. So I was trying to pull her away and he had something going on with him. And so I made a comment and it interested him. So he was like, come over here. I'll talk to you for a second. So I did. I followed him over and we started talking. And I was like, yeah, this place is nice and whatever, but I don't care about any of this. I was like, I don't really care except for this. And I pointed to the art that had just like been haunting me. I was like, I care about this. And he goes, really? And I just started describing it and describing how it made me feel and like why I cared about it and what it reminded me of. And he was like, those are mine. And then he introduced himself and he was like, I'm a contributing artist to this exhibit. And that is mine. You were talking about my stuff. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. This is the only thing I've cared about in this entire place. That's crazy. And so I said, you know what really stands out to me about these images? And I told him, and I said, it's like and I said, let's say I said something like, it's like they're dark, but they're still light or something like that. And he goes, what did you say? And I was like, oh, it's like the images are dark, but they're still light. And he was like, that's the name of the art book that I'm coming out with. I'm being published this year. And the name of the book is what you just said. Now, that's not really the name of the book, and that's not really what I just said, but that was crazy. So that was like point number 2. So this is before I even knew who he was. I had been captured by what he created. And then I'm talking to him about it and how it makes me feel. And he's like, yep, that's what I wanted. And then I literally said the words of his book to him. And he was like, interesting. And we're both looking at each other like, who is this? So the more we start talking, he's like, well, I would love to hang out with you. I'm in town, XYZ, but I would love to hang out with you. And maybe we can hang out this upcoming week. What are you doing on, I think it was Tuesday or Monday? I'm not quite sure. Whatever day it was, the day was going to be Valentine's Day. And I didn't even realize it at first. I was like, oh, whatever. And he was like, yeah, maybe we can get together. You can come out to my studio and we will sit and we can chat and do whatever. And, yeah, we can do that. And as I was speaking to him, I was beginning to wonder if I might be attracted to him. Because initially I was like, he's just a person. But when you start bonding in that way so quickly, I'm looking at him and I'm like, I don't know. Is he attractive? And so I'm feeling that. Those feelings are starting to come up. And then he makes a comment. I say, oh my God, I'm like taking up all your time because I was talking a lot. And he goes, oh, I don't mind. He was like, he said something about my eyes and something else. And so I was like, what's happening here? There was a lot of that. So anyway, it was time to leave and they pulled everyone out, and he and I were standing on like outside, and he was standing with his people, and I was waiting for my car to come around and come pick me up to take me home. One of my friends had to go get her car, and she was being walked there by some guy. So, we just let her go and do her thing. And his energy changed. He went from being this, he code switched. He went from being this soft-spoken, I love, tell me more about this piece and talk to me more. And we can meet up and go to my studio. And he changed from that to down south is where I stay. Like, I would learn where he was really from and what he was really about. And I was like, ooh, is this attractive to me? Do I like this? And let's just say that very quickly, the energy between us was turned up. And we knew, before we left there, that we were both very attracted to each other and that we were going to have plans. Now, what he did that night should have been an indication that that this was not going to go the way I thought it might go. But I still didn't really know who he was. And so I was like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that we're attracted to each other. It's okay that whatever. But that night he called me and I was like, hey, what's up? And I thought he might want to, discuss our burgeoning love affair and tell me about how beautiful I was. And he couldn't take his eyes off of me, and we connected, and he was so happy to see me. No, that man wanted to come over that night, and and I was let down by that. I was let down because, I just figured, God, can we even have dinner? Like, what? Why? But I just told him no. And I said, if you want to make plans with me for next week, you're still welcome to, but I'm not interested in that. And at that point in time, I started to try to say goodbye to the idea of him, because I still didn't know like who he was. But I went home and I Googled him. And I would say that this is when I really, really realized that he was basically the embodiment of what I had written down on my piece of paper. Like it had in my notes app, it had come to life. There was so much about him. I was so overwhelmed that when I looked him up, that I started to cry. I would not like, "Arr!" but I just was overwhelmed with gratitude. I was like, who did I find? Who is this? I start like I can't describe how excited I felt. And it didn't even occur to me yet that, well, girl, remember what you wrote down a couple days ago? I didn't even remember that. I was just so overwhelmed by what was happening. So the next day, I'm like, okay, well, we know what we found. Obviously, we're excited. I see who I was dealing with now. I get it. Hopefully, he follows through and I can actually hang out with him. He did text me that day. And I thought it was weird when we were going back and forth. He was like, yeah, we can meet up on this day. And by this time, I knew like that's Valentine's Day. I didn't say it to him. I didn't bring it up, but I was just like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. And I made a joke and he didn't like respond to it right. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know if we'll talk. I don't know. I kind of didn't know what to expect with him, but I was still excited because for my first time ever in my whole life, it looked like I was going to have a Valentine's Day date. So I was excited. Fast forward to the next week. The day comes and he says nothing to me. He says nothing to me all of Valentine's Day. He doesn't say, he didn't talk to me for the rest of that weekend. So we met on a Friday. He texted me on a Saturday. He didn't talk to me Sunday. Monday came, which was the day we were supposed to hang out. He said nothing to me all day. No good morning, no how are you, nothing. And I was very, very heartbroken, honestly, by this. I was confused. I was sad, but I blocked him and I tried to move on. The only problem is that sometimes, the heart wants what it wants. And I think I at least wanted maybe to see if he would ever give me like an explanation. And that was a lot of energy to be exposed to be expected to just close the door. And so I didn't do a good job at closing the door. And I ended up unblocking him that Tuesday morning at like maybe 7 o'clock. I was like, well, maybe he might slide through with some kind of explanation. And maybe this might be a funny story we tell our grandkids someday. And he did slide through. About 9 a.m., he was like, good morning. How are you? And I said, where were you? What happened? And he was like, what happened with what? And I said, Monday. We were supposed to hang out. And he was like, oh my God. He was like, you're right. I'm sorry. I got so into. Now, what I didn't know was that he had another woman like in the city that there was a whole thing. If you remember, you remember. Long story short, he's like, we can hang out. We'll hang out on Wednesday. And I accepted it because he apologized. He was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, did you know it was Valentine's Day? He was like, oh my God, I didn't realize. And that's garbage. A man in his 30s who has dealt with women before, you know when damn Valentine's Day is. But I was open to continuing on because, again, I was just so impressed with what I found. And I was reacting and I was having all, like, I was excited still. So I remember I took all my braids out. I washed, conditioned my hair, braided it down, and then I showed up for like our first meeting. I was wearing, I wanted to make sure I looked rugged to be in an art studio, but also feminine. And, I put a lot of thought into the outfit that I would wear. I remember it was raining that day and I pulled up and I walked in and I was immediately turned on by how many different mixed materials he worked with. The fact that it seemed like he was really good with his hands. That's always been on my list ever since I was like a young woman, a man that's good with his hands. And he just was so talented and you could just see it from all the different things that he did. And the way that he talked to me and the way that he handled me was extremely attractive. I could go on and on about that, but one thing I will say was I noticed very, very quickly that he seemed to have absolutely no game when it came to the concept of like courting someone. Like he seemed that like his first love was his career and anybody else would just not be a priority. And I knew in that moment that my dreams of him being like my person were broken. He was not going to be my person because I'd already been in this situation before. A man who's chasing his career but doesn't really want a relationship. All this love and all of this that I had to give and I didn't have forever. I knew I was going to have to say goodbye. And I knew I was going to have to say goodbye when I asked him what were his other plans for the day. And he said, plans? I didn't make any plans. I just thought we would hang out. And this is why I don't I'm not hard on people with the coffee dates. If a man is like, hey, you want to grab coffee or drinks or something? This is why I'm not like, no, I would rather you go walk in moving traffic. Never say that to me again. Because I know that there are men out there who don't give a single damn. Like when I talk about the difference between low pressure and low effort, he hadn't thought about nothing. He hadn't thought about nothing. And what was crazy is the part of Houston that his art studio was in, he frequented that part a lot. It would have been nothing for him to say, oh, but we can go around the corner and have lunch, or there was nothing in his mind, nothing that was related to spending time with me in a productive way. And I said, oh my God, girl, it can't be him. As excited as you were, as intense as you were at feeling this person, all this energy that's here, like, it can't be him. But you know what? This energy got to go somewhere. Okay. Because I think at that point I'd been abstinent for 2 years post pandemic. I don't know. I was like, something got to happen. So I decided that I would have my fun. And I remember I looked at him and I told him, well, I'm just going to go home then. I'm going to make, da 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 da. He was like, oh, what else you making? What else, And I was like, well, I could do this and maybe this. And I looked at him and I said, are you hungry? And he was like, yeah, because he picked up on the subtext. And so we got our butts in gear and we went over to my place. And I don't even want to hear from all of I don't need to hear it. All right. I'm a grown woman. I knew what I wanted and I knew what the reality was. I knew what the real was. Like I knew what was up with this. And my goal was to have this experience and let him go. I can't hold him. He wants to go and be an artist and do whatever and follow whatever dream. And he has no intentions of being a domestic and doing these things. And he doesn't feel that energy for me at all. I'm not impressive to him. Not only was I not impressive to him as a possible partner or girlfriend, but I also wasn't impressive to him as like a piece of art or a muse. I have noticed that I do enjoy very creative individuals, but they are very picky about who they partner with. And it's crazy because I've also met people who are like very creative and it's like, oh, well, what does your spouse do? Oh, she's a scientist. Oh, he's a blue collar worker. Oh, he's a doctor. And yet I'm a poet. I mean, so I know there's opposites attract. And I think I'm in a weird space where I may come off as being very like conventional, but I'm actually a silly little, whatever. I don't know. There's always a lack of alignment there between me and those very creative types. I'm never quite the muse that they want. And I think I also don't represent enough of like solid ground that they feel like they can, I don't know, whatever it is. That man was so unimpressed with me. I know when I first met him, he painted, he did photography, he did a lot of things. And I would ask him, well, where do you get your models from? And he said, I'll get them from Instagram, girls I find on Instagram. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, do you want my Instagram? He did not. He did not. And I remember that was a big thing with us. Like he did not want to follow me on Instagram. When I would ask him like, oh, well, do you want to connect there? He would be like, I mean, we can, but like just very, very unimpressed with me. So I knew I'm going to get everything I want out of this evening. And that's a lot of the things that I don't get to normally do. So making dinner for somebody, that's something that I love to do. I've gotten to do that maybe 4 times in my adult life because I'm literally always single. So I said, I'm going to do that for him. I'm going to make dinner. We're going to watch a movie. I'm going to get cuddled. I'm going to sleep with somebody in my bed. I sleep in my bed alone for probably 99% of my life. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to have that girlfriend wife experience that I never get the chance to have. I'm going to have it. And I did. And the worst part I want to say about our night together was the intimacy. We were not a good match in that department, and it was great to figure that out. But the best part was finding out more about who he was. In that night, he probably crossed off so many other things on my list as far as like who he was. The biggest thing was, though, obviously, was that he was not open to love. That was something that I put on the list, and specifically open to love with me. Nope, not at all. So I was so impressed with him, and I knew I would have to let him go at the same time. We woke up the next day, and I made breakfast for us, and he decided that that was the time to give me the speech about how he doesn't really believe in marriage and he doesn't want a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I knew this was coming. Thank you for participating in my domestic cosplay. I didn't say that. I just kind of, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, okay, thank you. And he left, and I went to go text him, and I just wanted to say, did you get out safely? Because literally, when I went to go text him, I had already deleted his number. I planned on never responding or reaching out again. I just wanted my night. I just wanted this. Like, if all that came from this is this one night, then whatever. And I was going to grieve and get over it and move on. And then if you know this story, if you remember, you know that when I texted him, the response I got back was, this user is not receiving text, call blocking, text blocking is activated. I had never seen that message before. I didn't know that that's the message that certain third rate internet and cell phone subscribers will give, that just basically lets you know they ain't got no service right now. I took that as, this man has come to my house, ate up all my meat, and then left, used my shower water, left me, and blocked me. I did not think our night was that bad. And it took me several days to try and recover from that. And I thought I had recovered. And then I had some wine and I decided to message him this incredibly unhinged message. And I was like, it won't matter. I'll just get that text blocking activated again and I'll just cry myself to sleep. And no, the message went through. And the next morning I got a lot of calls from a different number. And girl, boy, he, she, they, whoever's listening, that situation ended right there and then. I was mortified about all of it. And then a couple weeks later, I found out that I finally found his Instagram. It was a total fluke how it happened. A friend of a friend sent me a profile of someone else. And I was like, oh, look who he hangs out with. I wonder if he knows so-and-so. He didn't, but it inspired me to do a little bit of a search. It wasn't hard. And I ended up finding him, and I found that he had a Instagram profile that was nearly identical to this other woman. And there were several pictures of them both on their pages. Their bios were the same. She had a picture of him on her page where he was like shirtless in a bed, laying down on his arms. And in order to take the picture, she would have had to stand over him, straddle, and take the picture from the top like this. Very intimate photos. It was very clear that they were extremely close. She had pictures of him from, check it, Valentine's Day weekend. The weekend he was so busy. The weekend that he couldn't reach out. So I finally understood. I was like, oh, he's open to love, but she just has to be someone else, not me. So I did something. And what I did was took pictures that she had taken of him from her Instagram. And I unblocked him and I texted them to him. And I said, I see now that you were never free. And I was being dramatic for no reason. You always had there was always someone there. And I think I wouldn't have mattered so much if it was clear from his Instagram that he was just like single. But I sent those to a friend of mine. I sent them to a couple friends, their profiles, and they were like, oh, these two go together, baby. That man used you. He was not single. And it was so crazy to me in that moment to have to sit and contend with the fact that I could sit down, write something, call someone in, and they'd be an absolute nightmare. They'd be a assault on my self-esteem. Instead of it being something that moved me forward in life, it'd be this horrible experience. And I know what people will say, well, maybe you just weren't asking for the right things. Did it? In that moment, I understood that one of the healthiest ways to look at any of that kind of thinking is, it's not just me. I'm a co-creator. I can't control what somebody else does. I can't control someone else's free will. It reminds me of the movie Aladdin, whenever the genie is like, I can do whatever you want, but I can't make people fall in love. And when I was a kid, I used to think that's ridiculous. But as an adult, I'm like, yeah, no, you can't. You can't make that happen. Anyway, fast forward a couple months, I'm at a brunch with somebody who watches my videos. If you've seen my channel before, you know how this went. They decided to give me a speech about being negative when it came to my love life. Now, I was very, very fond of this man. And my goal was to push down that fondness because I thought he was, this was going to be the love of my life and he was going to take it and he was going to do his job and he was going to make plans. And I had all these ideas. And when he was ejected from my life so abruptly, I was forced to just sit in those feelings. And that created a very nasty emotional landscape for me for the first part of 2022. Around that same time, I decided to post about the event on my channel. The video was doing numbers, but woo, I was getting my ass handed to me. And I started to see just kind of like the darker side of being on the internet. So I was dealing with a lot of really heavy emotions. Surprised I didn't get like alcohol poisoning at the beginning of 2022. Like it was tough. And so here's this person who was in a situation where she had asked for something and he had shown up and everything worked out. So she thought it was within her, she thought she should give me a speech about being positive, manifesting, and, you know, all that. And I wasn't nice to her about it. And so we saw each other again and we got into it again. And her big takeaway with me was always, you're just so negative. You're just so, and now she didn't know me really outside of my videos and our like one or two interactions. She didn't really know me. And in that moment, I definitely gave her much more credence than I should have. I definitely was like, oh man, I wish I was a little bit different. I wish I was one of those people who was just like, it's okay, instead of who I am, which is like a wounded baby animal when it comes to all this stuff. And most importantly, I felt so uncomfortable because it was like, this is how everybody always thinks. When you don't heal how they think you should, when you go through things they think you shouldn't go through, when you're carrying something, instead of looking at what you went through and how it affected you. And because this was also a person who said this to me, this was also a person who carried a healthy baby when I miscarried. Like there were so many things in our lives. It was like, girl, if you were on my side, I don't know that you would have a attitude either. But the elephant in the room that nobody wants to say is that if you're not presenting emotions that they want you to present, it makes it hard to be around you. And they're really just thinking about that from a completely selfish point of view. Hey, what you're feeling is inconveniencing me. Hey, I don't like the way it makes me feel. And a lot of times when, you know, you're that person that has those inconvenient feelings, or you're going through something, whether it's depression, whether you're upset, whether you're angry, whether you're bitter, that you waited all this time to be 38 years old and you thought it was finally your time for somebody to come in and want you, and you are so masterfully rejected and it ends so badly. You have a right to be a little angry about that. At that time in my life, I think back, I'm like, I deserve to be surrounded by friends who were like, baby, let's go axe throwing. Let's go on a trip. Girl, let's get pictures of his face and let's go to target practice. Instead of people who were like, you just need to be more positive. You just need to, and so that brings me to the concept of being negative. Right. I remember when I shared the story on YouTube, it wasn't just her. It was also people here. And a lot of the dating stories I would share, people were like, oh, if only you were more positive. And so to that, I want to say these things. First of all, thank you for listening to me retelling that story. And secondly, I don't owe you joy. I don't owe anybody joy. When I share my feelings, when I share my reactions, when I share my life, I don't have to wrap it up in sparkly paper because that makes you feel better. I said what I said and I felt how I felt. And just because you look at a situation or you look at my life and you're like, oh, well, I don't think you should be going through that. And if you're going through it, it's because it's your fault and you're also so negative. That doesn't mean that I have to give a damn. I don't have to care about what you think, right? And for so long I did. For so long, when it came to my content, I was like, oh my God, if only I could just talk about the positive things. But when you're getting your butt kicked, when your boats never come in, your ships never come in, when you're hoping, when you're doing the things, and instead of even getting to go out on a date, my God, that was not at all what I was expecting at all when I made a comment about something that he was carrying like in his hand at that initial art exhibit. And he said, oh, come over. We'll talk about it. If I had known that things were going to unfold the way they did, I never would have spoke to him. I can't stress it enough that when you go through the things you go through, your reaction to them, it's not for everybody. Everybody's not meant to take it in. And, it's like I said in that video I posted the other day, safe spaces are not intersectional. Just because you haven't been through something or you don't feel, it doesn't take away what I'm saying and what I feel. I had a perfect right to feel negatively about my love life then. I have a right to feel that way now. Well, actually now I just feel like you just shouldn't, No, I have a right to feel how I want to feel. It is what it is. I don't owe you joy. And if my feelings make you uncomfortable, you are welcome to leave. I also wanted to talk about for a second the concept of not trying. I literally made that video and I talked about how much I tried, but I guess because the person couldn't see that I tried, they didn't think I tried. So I just remember from that time my friend saying to me, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I see you're putting out more of an effort. You're doing your lashes, you're doing your makeup. Like, I've never seen you do this before. And I just want to let you know I see it." People who knew me in real life said that to me. So if you watching a stranger's video online are like, "Oh, she didn't even try, she's still so negative," whatever. The last thing I want to talk about with this is the concept of social currency, period. So, as someone who is not considered overtly conventionally attractive, I will say that because I do want to say, and I thought about this with this article that came out in People magazine. This woman went viral because people were making so much fun of her, and all she did was post a selfie. And as somebody who's not overtly conventionally attractive, which means that if I post a selfie, I'm not, ain't gonna be no men who slide up underneath my picture to say, "My goodness, you free, you like being flown out." Like, that's not gonna happen with me, right? There's not gonna be anybody who slides up on my story if I look hot and says, "Hey, hey girl, you single?" There's not gonna be, if I gotta post me ripping my ass in half to get something, right? In that vein. I can also post a picture though and live in peace. There aren't going to be people who are underneath my picture who were saying, you're so unattractive, who are mocking my features, who are telling me you need to get surgery. And I thought that in and of itself is a privilege. I think sometimes we're so focused on being the exception and living exceptional lives and live in doing whatever that we don't pay attention to the fact that sometimes it's great to just be very average. So no, I may not be conventionally hyper attractive or whatever, but I also have never had to worry about posting something and having people rip me apart. And I'm going to say something about this woman. She has such a great attitude. She has such a calm and beautiful spirit. Um, she handled it really, really well. But she's also a great example of when we talk about there being a difference between being seen as pretty and then having the confidence and believing you're beautiful and what that reality is. We're talking about people like her. We're talking about things like this. You can think everything in the world positive about yourself, but it doesn't mean other people are going to feel that way. And it doesn't mean that they're going to treat you the way you feel about yourself. The way you feel about you becomes a shield sometimes for how other people want to treat you. So it's so important to have self-love and to have confidence. It's not going to necessarily change how somebody else feels, but it absolutely might change how you react and how you think about yourself in the event that someone's extremely negative feelings about you become overwhelming. When I made this video, when I talked about this subject, I definitely want to point out that I know it's such a privilege to be the kind of person that can be incognito, whether that is because you're just very average. So you can post, you're not going to get made fun of. You're not, I mean, that's social media is cruel, but also being in a body that can go out in the world and exist without having people wonder about you, make comments about you. I last year had hurt my leg. I had a hamstring injury, excuse me, and I was limping a lot. And the way that people would look at me when I would come in just from a little limp, I was like, "Oh, is this what it's like having like a visible illness? Is this what it's like having, is that something else I don't?" So that health privilege, right? Where you just look healthy, that is, and where you are healthy, right? Because sometimes you can look healthy and not be it. But that's also a social currency that I don't think we think about when we're bitching about not being hot enough to get flown out. I'm saying all this to say, there's definitely always going to be a word to be said, especially if you're a woman, for not being considered jaw-droppingly, back-achingly beautiful. You're a woman trying to date and exist in the world of men, and you wonder, if I was higher up on the desirability scale, would I have better experiences? And the answer is you definitely would probably have more choices. But I want it to also be known that I know that there's other social currencies that you may have, just, when it comes to visibility, just because you're considered average and healthy. And those are things that should also be celebrated and recognized. Anyway, that is the end of my conversation around pretty privilege. Boy, didn't you get a lot in this video. You got a story time, you got a you got a lot. But I don't plan on talking about this subject a lot. I definitely don't plan on going back and forth with anybody who might have like reactions or this or that. And I don't even mean going back and forth in a negative way. I just mean when it comes to this subject, I've said what I'm going to say about it. This is obviously a much longer video than before, and I had a lot more to say, but I've said what I'm going to say. This is kind of it, and I do want to thank you all for remembering that comment section of my Redux video that I made about 2 weeks ago. Felt like a family reunion. It really did. So for those of you who saw my content years ago and were like, "Hey, yeah, let's talk about this." Yeah, I appreciate you. And for the new ones, there's some new ones over here. I hope I make content in my new era that you'll actually enjoy. And that is the end of this video. As always, thank you for watching.